All right, so get this. We're diving deep today into Indian infrastructure, specifically PNC Infratech. Now, you might have seen some headlines about their Q2 FY25 results, but we're going way beyond that. We've got their investor presentation, press releases, even their auditor's report. We're trying to get the full picture here.
Yeah, and what's interesting is that on the surface, things might look a little puzzling.
Oh, how so?
Well, PNC's revenue is actually down year on year, but their profitability is way up. We're talking a 54% jump in EBITDA.
Okay, hold on. Back up for a second. EBITDA. For those of us who don't spend all day staring at spreadsheets, what is that telling us?
Right. EBITDA stands for earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. It's basically a way to measure a company's core operating profitability. You're kind of cutting through some of the accounting noise. And that 54% jump, that's a big sign that PNC is getting more efficient.
So revenue's down, but they're making more money from what they're doing. That definitely sets the stage for some serious digging. What were the actual numbers we're working with here?
Sure. So for Q2 FY25, PNC's revenue landed at Rs 11,149 crores, down from Rs 1,693 crores in the same quarter last year. But like I said, EBITDA soared to Rs 228 crores, compared to just Rs 134 crores previously.
So how do we explain this contradiction? Is this just some accounting magic trick? Or is there a real story here?
Well, there's a story here, and it's a fascinating one. It's about how PNC is shifting gears within India's infrastructure landscape. So one piece of the puzzle is that they received a bonus of Rs 56 crores from MSRDC, and they won a big arbitration case for Rs 379 crores back in Q1 FY25. That definitely boosted their bottom line. But the real key is understanding how the composition of their business is changing.
You're talking about the types of projects they're taking on.
Exactly. So if you break down their revenue by segment, we see that the contribution from their traditional EBC projects, so that's engineering, procurement, and construction, that actually stayed pretty steady, going from 68% to 71%.
Okay.
The real change is in their water segment, which took a nosedive from 21% down to just 10%.
Wow, that's a huge drop. But if EPC is holding steady, where's that extra revenue coming from?
Well, you're seeing PNC strategically shifting towards the government's massive push for highway development. Their contribution from toll annuity projects, that's where they build and operate toll roads, that surged from 11% to 19%.
So they're not just building stuff anymore, they're getting into the long-term operations game. Smart move, if you ask me. But can they handle this? Do they even have enough projects lined up to make this strategy work?
That's where their order book comes into play. And it's pretty impressive. We're talking a whopping Rs 19,900 crores worth of projects in the pipeline.
Okay, I'm no math whiz, but that sounds like a lot.
It's more than 2.6 times their entire FY24 revenue. So this gives them incredible visibility for future growth.
So they've got the projects lined up. Which ones should we be keeping an eye on?
Well, there are some big names in there. The Jalandhar and Poon Ring Road projects with MSRDC are going to be huge. Then there's the Akolkot, PKG Dutayan with NHAI. And let's not forget the Varanasi-Ranchi-Kolkata Highway project on hybrid annuity mode. These are major infrastructure developments that will definitely shape the future of India.
And it sounds like PNC is right at the heart of it all. But hold on, didn't they just sell off a bunch of their assets? How does that fit into this picture of aggressive growth?
That's where PNC's financial maneuvering gets even more interesting. They recently made a strategic move by divesting their equity stakes in 12 road assets to Highways Infrastructure Trust. We'll call it HIT for short. And they did this for a cool Rs, 9,005.7 crore. That's 11 national highway HAM assets and 1 state highway BOT toll asset.
Okay, so they're selling off existing assets while taking on these new projects. What's the thinking there? Is it just about freeing up cash, or is there like a deeper strategy at play?
It's a brilliant move on multiple levels. First, it allows them to unlock capital tied up in existing projects, and then they can redeploy that capital into these new high-growth opportunities we were just talking about.
So it's like they're trading in their old car for a shiny new sports car.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it's not just about the cash. This divestiture also helps PNC de-risk their portfolio by reducing their exposure to any potential issues with those older assets.
Smart. So they're streamlining their operations, freeing up capital, and focusing on higher growth areas. That all paints a pretty rosy picture, but wasn't there some trouble brewing with the CBI investigation?
Yes. That adds a layer of complexity we can't ignore. Earlier this year, the CBI conducted searches at PNC's offices. Even in some directors' residences, there were allegations of corruption.
Well, hold on. Corruption, that's serious stuff. What exactly were the accusations, and what happened?
The details are still unfolding, but it involved potential violations of the Prevention of Corruption Act and the Indian Penal Code. The CBI filed a charge sheet, and the Ministry of Road Transport and Highways actually disqualified PNC in 2 of its subsidiaries from participating in any ministry tenders for a year.
Wow. That's a huge blow. So they're basically shut out from bidding on new government projects. What's PNC doing about that? Are they just rolling over?
Absolutely not. They're fighting back hard. They immediately filed petitions challenging the disqualification in the Delhi High Court.
So a mixed bag so far. Strong financials and a clear strategy, but with this looming legal battle. What does all this mean for investors trying to make sense of PNC Infratech?
That's the million-dollar question. And it's exactly what we'll unpack in the next part of our deep dive. So let's pick up where we left off with that CBI investigation and its potential impact on PNC Infratech. It's a pretty important factor when you're evaluating a company.
Yeah, for sure. It definitely adds a layer of uncertainty. So where do things stand right now?
Well, PNC is actively challenging the ministry's disqualification. They filed those petitions in the Delhi High Court, arguing that the ministry's decision was, unfair and based on incomplete information.
Okay, and what was the court's response?
So the Delhi High Court initially dismissed their petitions.
Oh.
This could be seen as a setback, but it's not the end of the road for them.
I still have options.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They can appeal this decision to the division bench of the High Court,
Yeah.
basically taking it to a higher level of judicial review.
So they're not giving up.
Not at all. They're really committed to clearing their name and protecting their reputation.
That's good to hear. But while all this is going on, what's happening with their day-to-day operations? Are those massive projects we talked about grinding to a halt?
That's what's so impressive here. Even with this legal cloud hanging overhead, PNC's core construction activities across India are humming along as usual. They don't anticipate any significant disruption or financial impact from these legal proceedings.
Wow, that's reassuring. It's a testament to their management team, I guess. But let's shift gears for a second. We talked about their strategic asset sale and that mountain of projects in their order book. To pull all that off, they're going to need a lot of people, right?
You got it. And that's reflected in their workforce numbers. Over the past year, PNC has significantly ramped up its employee count. As of September 2024, they had 10,187 employees, which is a sizable jump from 8,879 the year before.
Wow, that's a lot of new hires. Is this a good thing?
It's a good question. Rapid expansion can sometimes lead to problems.
Yeah.
But in PNC's case, this workforce increase seems to be directly tied to their ambitious growth plans. They're staffing up to handle that massive order book and their strategic shift towards those larger, more complex projects, especially in the highway segment.
So it's not just about adding bodies, it's about getting the right expertise.
Right.
Makes sense. But let's zoom back in on some of the financial details here. Anything interesting in that auditor's report we haven't talked about yet?
Well, there's always something interesting when you dig into these reports. One thing that caught my eye was just the sheer scale of PNC's operations. The auditor's statement actually includes unaudited financial information for 30 subsidiaries and 3 joint operations.
30 subsidiaries.
That's a lot to keep track of.
What's the significance of that?
Well, it kind of speaks to the complexity of their business and the way they structure their projects. Often these subsidiaries are created for specific projects or to manage different aspects of their operations. It's a way to compartmentalize risk.
So it's not just one big company, it's like a network of smaller companies.
Exactly.
That's pretty interesting. But how are all those subsidiaries performing financially?
Well, for those 30 subsidiaries, the unaudited interim financial results show a combined revenue of Rs 28,858.76 lakhs and a total net profit after tax of Rs 265.78 lakhs for the quarter ended September 30th, 2024.
So they're pulling their weight. But to get the complete picture, we need to look at the consolidated performance, right?
Let's zoom out and see how PNC Infratech is performing as a whole.
Okay, so we've gone pretty deep into the individual pieces here. You know, their financials, the projects at CBI investigation, even their workforce.
Right.
Now let's step back and look at the big picture. How's it all come together in their consolidated performance?
Exactly. Think of it as looking at the forest rather than the trees. And when you do that, a pretty compelling picture emerges. PNC Infratech's consolidated revenue for Q2 FY25 came in at Rs 1,427 crores.
Okay, and how does that compare to their standalone revenue?
Well, that difference, the extra Rs, 278 crores. That's the contribution from all those subsidiaries and joint ventures.
It highlights how important that network is.
Yeah, for sure.
It's like an engine for growth with all these different parts working together. But revenue is only part of the story, right? What about profitability on a consolidated basis? Are they still maintaining those impressive margins?
They are, and that's what's so remarkable. Their consolidated EBITDA margin actually climbed to an impressive 25%.
Okay, for those of us who don't speak fluent finance, remind us what that margin means.
Sure. So a 25% EBITDA margin means that for every Rs 100 of revenue they bring in Rs, 25 is pure profit. Before you account for things like interest taxes, depreciation, and amortization.
That's pretty good.
It is. It shows they're controlling costs and operating efficiently.
Right, so they're making money. But what about their profit after tax?
Their consolidated PE for Q2 FY25 came in at Rs 83 crores, with a PE margin of 5.8%.
5.8% doesn't sound as impressive as that 25%.
True, but remember they're navigating that CBI investigation. They're dealing with all the legal fallout, and they're still managing to deliver these profits. That resilience is something investors should definitely be paying attention to.
It really shows they're not letting those challenges stop them. So after spending all this time digging into PNC Infratech, what's the big takeaway?
Well, PNC Infratech is a company with a clear vision for growth. They have a robust order book with some really exciting projects, and they're taking a very strategic approach to asset management. They're not afraid to make bold moves like that divestiture to really position themselves for the future.
But they're not without their challenges, right?
Absolutely. That CBI investigation and the ministry's actions are definitely a concern. They create some uncertainty that investors need to be aware of. How this legal battle plays out will have big implications for their long-term trajectory.
It's a good reminder that even in an industry as stable as infrastructure, there are always risks and unexpected hurdles. So what's the one big question our listeners should be thinking about after this deep dive?
Well, here's something to consider. India has these ambitious plans to really transform its infrastructure. They're spending billions of dollars on new roads, highways, and other projects. PNC Infratech, with their proven track record and this really aggressive growth strategy, is aiming to be a major player in that transformation. The question is if they could overcome these legal challenges. What role will they ultimately play in shaping the future of India?
That's a great question to leave our listeners with. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into PNC Infratech. If you're interested in learning more, remember to check out the show notes for links to all the source documents. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.